Are we ready? Okay. All right, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order for Monday, June 9th for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. We'll start with roll call. Position 1, Carrie Stuckey, I am here. Position 2 and 3 are currently vacant. Position 4, Eric Dybsinski.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
Position 6 is also empty. And Vicki Biggs.
Here.
Callie Boyer. And Councilmember Marshall is not here. Okay, we will move on to item number 2, approval of the agenda. Were there any questions or comments about the agenda?
Now I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is approved. We will move on to item 3, approval of minutes for our meeting of May 12th, 2025. Were there any questions about the minutes or any changes to be made?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is approved. Next, we will move on to item 4, public comment. We don't have anyone present to make public comment. Were there any emailed public comments?
Not since the release of the agenda. We did receive one today, just regarding the splash park. Observation that kids were blocking up the drains to kind of create a pool there, and some of the parents with smaller kids were just concerned about that. We will ask staff to keep an eye while they're out there doing maintenance, just to kind of see what's happening out there. Is this something that happens very often? I suppose you probably could get a good, foot and a half or so, maybe, if that whole thing were to fill up. Really, a child could drown in a couple inches of water. Now, the lagoon and the splash park are not monitored by lifeguards. It's a use at your own risk. We do have to rely on parents to monitor kids' behavior and activities, and if anything is happening unsafe, step in and address that. I don't know if it happens frequently enough to do anything, I don't know, substantial.
It happens
extreme, but
every day.
yeah.
Every day that there's kids out there, it happens. Mainly in that one section closest to the water, but there is still the area that's closest to the, I guess that would be to the north side, that little kids, there's still water where they can sit and play.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say every time I'm there with my children, it inevitably,
They're blocking it.
They're blocking it.
Try and get a little
Little
pool
kind of
going
kiddie
there.
pool type
Yeah.
thing, splashing, yes.
So we'll monitor it. We'll have to take a look at it and assess if there's a safety issue there or not.
Okay, we will move on to our discussion items then. Item A, Parks and Recreation Master Plan discussion, the RFP.
All right, so we have a few RFPs that we've been going through with the subcommittees, and have we sent it to you last meeting, and giving you a chance to kind of look through it. I will go through the scope here, and I'll share my window. All right, so the scope of services objectives basically for the PROS plan, the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan, is listed out here. We have a plan that was put together by Development Services in 2019, before the Parks and Recreation Department was formed. We have budgeted $80,000 to do an update to the PROS plan. I would consider this a little more probably involved than just an update to the current plan. With the development of the new department and the creation of the new recreation division, that the marina is also included in the department. We have several different things that we'll want to look at with a comprehensive Parks and Recreation master plan. So the main scope of services includes coordination with the city, to work with the project management team in all phases of the project and to provide a project schedule that'll be submitted by the consultant. We'll have them facilitate the public process of master plan development to identify, describe, and implement a comprehensive strategy and methodology for citizen involvement in this master plan development process, and ensure that residents, user groups, associations, and other stakeholders that are provided an opportunity to participate in the plan. We'll have them conduct public meetings and focus groups, individual stakeholder interviews, schedule and conduct meetings with our advisory commission, provide progress reports, act as professional facilitators to gather specific information about services, uses, preferences, and any agency strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and provide well-organized and directed activities that'll ensure a positive, open process. They'll provide written records and summaries of the results of all the public processes and communication strategies and help build consensus and agreement on the plan. And include any user and non-user input as much as possible of our facilities or services or programs the department provides. Number 3 is a statistically valid survey to provide a community needs assessment survey with a return date that accurately represents a sampling of the community of our population. And that'll be used as a baseline to determine needs, desires, and willingness to pay as we look at performas and fee schedules and programs and services needed. 4 will be demographic trends. This is contained in a lot of our various comprehensive plans that we do. We'll be using the city's comp plan, census data, and other resources along with this. The county, just as a side note, is also updating their comprehensive plan, and they're doing a PROS plan portion of that plan. So it's actually really good timing to align with what the county is doing. And so we'll include a lot of that information in as well and tie that in. They'll look at existing and future facilities, analysis of level of service. So this will be kind of be coming right on the tail end of the parks of the Recreation Center feasibility study. So we'll incorporate some of that information into the department's comprehensive planning. So this assessment will include comparative analysis of communities of similar size to us. It'll look at capacity of each amenity found, everything from our park facilities, trails that we've built, special facilities. We'll look at the center, and then also, like I said, add in a little bit about what's coming out of the Recreation Center feasibility study as well. So it'll do an evaluation of those and also give us an idea on resident and visitor perspective, look at criteria and based on community's values, and then include it and identify best possible providers of community recreation services and recommendations for minimizing duplication of enhancing possibilities for partnerships where appropriate. In the void of having a Parks and Recreation department within the city, we have a lot of like leagues, we have this special recreation district, we have a lot of clubs that have been trying to fill that gap, and so we don't want to be redundant with those, and we want to find good partnerships and a good synergy with them where possible. Next is to rank and prioritize demand and opportunities. Recommendations for needs regarding land acquisition, development of parks, trails, open space, and recreation facilities and programs. And then develop a set of prioritized recommendations for maintenance and renovation of parks, trails, open space, recreation facilities, and programs. So we've already kind of started that process, but for those that were part of the original setting of priorities, you understand like very large scope of needs and really trying to wrangle down, okay, what can we bite off year after year? What are the right projects to put forward in the budget process? Make sure we have the right appropriations. What are the financial strategies you want to go after and pursue to help get these things done without putting too much undue burden on city resources. So really understanding those priorities is a big part of how our implementation plans will go forward. And then an analysis of programs and services, looking at what we currently provide in recreation programs, as well as our maintenance schedules with our marina and park staff in relation to present and future goals, objectives, and directives. Next is provide user fee analysis and philosophy for facilities. So this is our cost recovery model that will be included in there to include best practices in comparable cities. And that will set our methodology for how we will go forward with changes in user fees. Number 10 is provide analysis and recommendations of the best possible providers for programs and services and look at where we can have better collaborative partnerships. We also want to look at groups like the Navy and the county and the state. We have some programs that we are coordinating with state parks, and we used to do quite a bit of programming with the Navy as far as adult leagues, and we really like to get back into that with them and pursue that. The consultant will do progress reporting, meetings as often as necessary. They'll provide us with copies of all completed reports and studies, and we'll have a task committee on this master plan, probably as a subcommittee, just so we can meet a little more often than once a month, but we'll do regular progress reports to the commission at this meeting. And then the action plan, which will look at all the demographic information for the community. It'll analyze information on participation, our operations and programs, land use, as well as trends, and make those level of service recommendations. It'll provide usable and workable definitions and recommendations for designated park and open spaces with acreage. We'll look at that comparative to national trends. National Recreation Parks Association provides a lot of those best practice metrics, and those will include things like dollars spent per capita or acreage of park per capita that's appropriate for our community. As well as looking at feedback from all these user groups, especially when we talk about youth in the community. We have had a lot of engagement with especially high school students that would like to see certain facilities and programs happen, and so a lot of that will be included in here. We'll have a definitive program for acquisition and development of parkland, recreation facilities, and open space. That's something that's really important to the administration, that we have a good plan as we look at acquisition of additional public lands for parks. And then look at strategies and priorities and an analysis of budget support and funding mechanisms for short-term, mid-term, and long-term projects for the park system and our facilities and recreation programs. It'll include a ground maintenance management plan to help Parks Department with identifying that scope for routine and preventive maintenance programs, work management, asset life cycle management, feedback program. How do we have a better method for people giving us feedback, especially around issues or things that they'd like to see happen in the parks? Performance measurements, and then we'll probably also look at an asset management program. So we were just talking about that this morning, how we can better track activities that are outside of our regular maintenance scope, whether we're doing that for other departments or special events or other partnerships. For instance, we maintain the grounds around the Pool Park and Recreation District's facilities, and we charge them back for that. And then they'll provide those supporting materials and present that both for adoption by the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then we'll present that to the council for adoption and implementation. It's anticipated that this will be a 5-year plan, and then at the end of 5 years, we'll look at updating it. It will have some timelines that go beyond those 5 years, and we'll just make sure that those are still in line and meeting those benchmarks as we go along, and if we need to make some tweaks to that at the 5-year update, then we'll do that as well. So that's the basic scope of the RFP. We have in here the full document, including our, under attachment A, our professional services agreement and our criteria for grading. This is something that we'll want to just make sure we're good with before we send this out. We have it right now as a weighted point value for 10 points for letter of interest, 20 points for the firm profile and relevant experience, 10 points on proposed staff and their experience and similar projects they've done, 30 points for project approach, and 30 points for cost proposal. Cost proposal is obviously because we do have a not to exceed, or at least we want someone that can work with us, and if we need to go back to council for to adjust that appropriation, that we have good justification around that and understand the value that we're receiving for that, as well as project approach, mostly because we do want this to be a very community collaborative effort that has a lot of community feedback, and so I think that's going to be really important to understand how they're going to do that, and that we can get the most value out of those meetings, so that we feel that this is a resident and community-led initiative, and we have a vision that really comes from the Oak Harbor community. That covers the major points. We have a tentative timeline. We will have to adjust this depending on when this gets out. It'll probably be pushed back a little bit, but it'll give you here a good idea of what we're looking at. We would hope that we can get the process and contracts and everything all together to have that completed within about 3 months, and then we anticipate that the plan itself will take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. That's the basic overview. Happy to answer any questions or hear your feedback as you looked over it on things that you'd like to tweak or any edits you had. We had a few suggestions on a few minor edits, but nothing substantial as far as the scope goes. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Did anyone have any comments, thoughts? No. I read over it. I didn't have any changes for it or anything.
Okay, so if everyone's happy with it, we'll go ahead and schedule the workshop with council just to propose this before we post it.
Okay, let's move on to our next item. Item B, Inclusive Playground RFP.
All right, so very similar to the last item. Give this to you guys to give a look over. So our Parks and Playgrounds Committee has been the lead on this project. Just for a quick background, we went after funding to implement a inclusive regional playground at Windjammer Park. We did score very well with the RCO grant committee. Their main feedback was that they would like to see us more shovel ready and have plans and permits in hand, ready to go. The state has had some tight budget considerations, and so they have meshed and deactivated a few grant programs. So we're probably going to have to wait for another cycle. So it gives us an opportunity to have a little time to do a little more planning and then be shovel ready when that grant comes back around. And then we're hoping to be very successful with that. We have funds that are allocated out of the Windjammer Improvement Funds for the city's match to that grant. And we can include in that the planning and permitting process and go ahead and get that portion completed. So it's a little more different than we would normally do for a playground project, treating it a little more like a facility construction project rather than more of a design build. So again, I'll just go after. Right now, we really don't have any, because this is really more of an RFQ, we just want to get a good firm that can help with this and hopefully roll it over into an implementation contract and construction contract, which really is just providing the equipment and then it's just the site prep, the pour for the pour-in-place surfacing, installation of fencing and connecting pathways, and then installation of the equipment. So for this portion of it, we haven't weighted the grading criteria. We have for the criteria their understanding of the scope of work and the project, completeness of the work included in their proposal, the consultant's experience, qualifications of the consultant staff, and then demonstrated ability to perform the work and to control costs and meet schedules, and really what's been their past success with similar projects like that. So that's 100 points broken out between the 5 criteria. We do have on here to do a interview process, and then we have the weighted criteria for final candidates there. We don't have any schedule yet or time frame on that on when we'll bring this. I don't have a set date for bringing this to council for a workshop. But if you guys are good with it at this point, if we don't have a lot of tweaks, we'll try and get it scheduled. We'll probably end up being towards the end of summer or early fall. So the scope, let me scroll down to that. Oh, let me share my screen. All right, project overview includes looking at the site location. While we do have a site in mind, we have looked at a couple other sites, including some of our other parks like Neal Park, replacing the playground at Fort Nugent. We did an assessment of the Fort Nugent playground. We're not seeing much in the way of deterioration. Usually with those types of playgrounds, you start getting some rot underneath the ground. But it looks like the service life for that playground is still far enough out that we don't really want to replace it yet. So Windjammer Park really is kind of the ideal location for it. But we will have them look at that, looking at permitting requirements, the mission and goals with this playground, and any project partners. Citizen participation plan is, we'll look at what we've done so far around the Windjammer Park research, survey of potential users and stakeholders, especially families with kids with special needs and disabilities, conducts a couple of community meetings and get some input from our community on it, and then compile that information. We'll look at a needs analysis, the demographic of our community. As has been mentioned before, we are an exceptional family-based community identified by the Naval Air Station, and so the base is specifically geared and provides services for families with special needs. So we have a disproportionately high number of families that we service there. And so we really want to understand what their needs are, what their desires are for this kind of facility, and hopefully this is a first of many initiatives to better serve that demographic in our community, which has been very underserved from a city standpoint historically. Review our existing facilities, and then scale the project to potential participation levels and needs. We've identified, somewhere around a 10,000 to 15,000 square foot footprint, but we want them to give us some input on that. Comparison of best practices with other communities, regionally and nationally. And then look at the impact of user groups' needs on facility component listings. So what kind of features do we need to have in the playground? What other considerations do we need? Shading, seating, water, restrooms, pathways, parking, all those kind of things. So they'll also kind of be part of that site analysis, looking at other potential sites, and then looking at this site and how what's needed as far as constructability and access. Because we are close to the shoreline, there'll be some additional permitting considerations, which makes this fortuitous that we're getting a little bit of a head start on that part of the process. And then looking at that footprint preparation. For layout and design, they'll create a site plan, recommendations for safety surfacing, and support sublayer, list of equipment and fixtures, have a imaginative theming as part of the play space, look at fencing needs and style, lighting, spatial relationship of components, basically the layout and footprint of that, and then provide conceptual plans and renderings. And that'll help us with our fundraising efforts as well. Project capital cost estimate, so we'll really get a good dialed in number. We've worked with playground providers to get a general cost estimate, which is what we've used for our grant applications. And so this will give us a really good breakdown of that budget and what those real costs are going to be for construction, which will really help with those grant applications. Everything from equipment costs as well as soft costs. And then construction documents for the site prep, stormwater, electrical hookups, subsurfacing, and fixtures and all those kind of things as well from the engineering side. And then proposal for the implementation phase. So this is to roll over that agreement once we have the funding secured to go ahead with project and construction management and installation. And then we'll provide contingencies on there as well. We've seen a lot of fluctuation in construction pricing over the last several years, and we want to be able to anticipate that so we can keep the project within our budget parameters. So basic scope, happy to answer any questions. Our playground, Parks and Playgrounds subcommittee has met several times with consultants and had discussions together about this, and so this has been a very long running planning for this project. We have brought this to council in a workshop previously when we were getting ready to do the fundraising and grant applications. Support was all very positive, and they were all in favor of the budgeting of an allocation of those Windjammer improvement funds for a portion of the match. So.
I mean, this is a little in the weeds, but I just want to make sure that it gets mentioned as we go into those conversations. I think Windjammer is the right site for this. I think we should leave Neal Park a blank slate, but the challenge we'll have with Windjammer is seagulls. And knowing that we're probably going to have a higher maintenance cost because of shell damage. I've worked commercially on a lot of the buildings that are down there on Pioneer, and all of them have stuff on roofs or have had significant roof damage over the years just from the dropping of shells. The old tennis courts that we had down there years ago, which is where that playground is, closer to the apartments, that was just decimated by shells. So just something to consider. I know the pour-in-place surface will handle much better than a tennis court with its finish, but knowing that we will see that, something we need to consider, and if there's any possible mitigations that can be done to help with that, because the last thing we want to do is put valuable city staff on shell sweeping duty and also to have sharp bits of shells for people, you know, at a park that we're saying is going to allow for people of all mobilities and abilities, which could, you know, precipitate falls and other things that we're, you know, creating a safe environment for. Sharp shells, no bueno. So just giving a special attention to that, because we don't see it right now too much with the structures that we have there, except on the plaza a little bit. But as we continue to put more non-natural surfaces in there, I think the seagulls are going to find that a playground for them as well.
Yeah, appreciate those comments. That actually came up when we landed on that site after we looked at all the different options and determined that would be the most ideal location for the type of facility was seagull shells. So that's a question that keeps coming up when we talk with providers about play surfacing. How robust, what are different surfacing types you have? At the Washington Recreation Parks Association conference last month, I went around and talked to playground providers specifically about the surfacing and talked about that issue, both in, is there anything that helps armor against that, and or how easy it is to replace damaged sections, and how do you do that? There's everything from, you can have a modular kind of tile style, or what they often do, which has been the practice for quite a while, is if they have to replace a section that has gotten so damaged it becomes a trip hazard, they cut out a design and actually kind of make it as part of the, you know, aesthetic. But yeah, definitely a consideration in that location.
Tom?
If this ends up at Windjammer, this will be in addition to the current playground. It won't replace it. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So this is planned to be on the west side of the park by Kitchen A and B. B and C. B and C.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, we will go ahead and move on to item C, Safe Streets for All Grant Support Letter.
All right, I will share this screen as well. Okay, so this is in your packet. So this is a grant for Safe Streets and Roads for All program. And Wendy, who's putting in this grant, specifically looking at around State Route 20 and Scenic Heights. We've had some public comment on the safety of that area as people are coming to access the Scenic Heights trailhead, and how to mitigate some of the issues there with such a heavy traffic use. So this is a letter of support for that grant, and I'll go ahead and just read it for the commission. This is to the Honorable Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy. Mr. Secretary Duffy, as chair of the City of Oak Harbor Parks and Recreation Commission and a parent, I know the important, actually, Carrie, do you want to read this since this is coming from you, really?
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to read it for you, but since we have you here, you might as well.
Sure. Mr. Secretary Duffy, as chair of the City of Oak Harbor Parks and Recreation Commission and as a parent, I know the importance of having safe streets for our families who live, work, and play in our busy neighborhoods, especially those areas located adjacent to State Route 20, a 4-lane state highway. Oak Harbor has the highest population density in Island County, with a large number of young families and children under the age of 18, 28%. With over 20,000 cars driving through the heart of Oak Harbor every day, the highway passes schools and parks, and countless people have crossed these very busy intersections to get from home to school, work, and businesses. With speed limits between 30 and 40 miles per hour, State Route 20 accounted for 66% of fatalities and 50% of serious injury crashes between 2018 and 2022, and an alarming increase in the number of pedestrian fatalities, 10% in 2009 to 19% in 2021. One of the goals of the commission is to make Oak Harbor more walkable and multimodal. Connecting trail systems to streets with safe crossings that then connect back to other walking and bike paths or trails would make Oak Harbor that much more attractive to families to live and grow here. The city participated in the county's Safe Streets and Roads for All planning grant and adopted its comprehensive safety action plan, which calls out well over 20 projects that will improve pedestrian safety along the State Route 20, with the second highest priority being in Oak Harbor. Now we need to take the next step and implement changes to streets that are adjacent to the highway and improve the safety of pedestrians. The Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant will provide the city the funding necessary to implement low-cost, high-impact strategies over a wide geographic area that will make a difference to our families and ultimately save lives. We strongly encourage you to fund the city's request. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Carrie Stuckey.
Can I just say first that we should all show a little appreciation for Carrie for all the stuff that she does, like this. I mean, constantly the written communications and verbal communications, she just does them so well and with grace and poise. And I don't know if she gets enough credit for all that she does. So I just want to say that here, that, you know, we should all be thanking Carrie for all that she does. It's far beyond a normal chair. And I really appreciate your leadership and how well you do this type of work. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all of your work, too. You all work very hard. Did anyone have any comments or questions? Okay. All right. Any?
I'd probably call for a motion of approval and for you to sign on behalf of the commission for this letter.
Okay.
I would like to see that list, if we can get that list, just of the priorities and as well as what's in and around Oak Harbor. And then if we can get some more continuing updates from, I think, Public Works that's working on this, just in general, that would be helpful. Or even having them as for discussion in here regarding this. One other comment I'd like to make is the multimodal transportation thing is really huge. We have so many more vehicles that are, or ways of transportation that are a cross between a vehicle and, you know, what we typically thought of as pedestrians, whether that's, you know, e-bikes, longboards, right? Motorized longboards. I just had an incident the other day where a kid broadsided my vehicle trying to pull onto 20. And he wasn't there, and he was bombing down the hill, you know, because you can go fast on those. And it's just, it's a continuing, you know, thing that we have to consider, and we need to make sure that this is sort of evolution-proof to vehicles that you can put on 2 feet, not going down a hill and still go 30 miles an hour. And where do we put them? So I just want to make sure we talk about that. But I'll make a motion, you know, to approve this as written here and go forward.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, next we will move on to item D, Parks and Recreation City Council Joint Workshop Update. Brian, did you have anything to say to start out with?
I can give my notes on it if you want.
Sure.
So we met with City Council in a joint workshop. We got feedback from them, had some good discussion. I think we were a little worried it'd be just a presentation and then a few questions, and I know the commission really wanted to have a lot of back and forth, especially around their vision and priorities, and I think we did get a lot of that. So I feel it was very successful as far as what you were looking to come out of that with. We talked about Windjammer Park, the inclusive playground, the windmill, some of the features there. Their feedback on it was varied. They really wanted to see a lot of activity in the park. The shade structures were a talking point, as it always is, and we do have those in our implementation budget for this year. So we're working on that now. Restrooms, food trucks and vendors. How do we encourage participation? Those are all things that we're working on right now. Amenities versus attractions was something that kind of came out of that, really talking about, you know, besides just providing some fun aspects. How do we activate the space and really draw people there as a destination? Heard a couple of maybe not inline visions with it of, caution that, you can't shove everything into Windjammer Park. We kind of use that as our one stop for everything, versus I want to see it full of life and a lot of activities. And so I think, and I really get it, what they're trying to get at is, they want to see our parks well activated. We want to be careful of overuse or maybe better spread the love with our park system. We do have other parks that are very useful for a lot of these things that are underutilized. Catalina Park is a gorgeous waterfront park right there between the marina and the yacht club, with a nice little pavilion. We do a few little concerts there over the summer, but there's a lot more that we can do at that park. With the reconfiguration of the Flintstone Park, we have a little more usable turf space. We can do more activations there as well, so some things to think about. Another topic that was brought up was the Recreation Center feasibility study. Didn't get a lot of feedback on that, other than a surprise discussion about North End Fitness property as a possible location, potential site. We are doing site visits with some of the consultants that are interested in putting a proposal in for the feasibility study, and I've been taking them around on tours around the city at all the various potential locations, and just so they can kind of be familiar with it and have some ideas on locations that we might not have thought of, or different things. And we've shown them that side as well. North End Fitness is about 16,000 square feet, has intermediate poles throughout the building, so its usability for recreation center is limited. Possible potential there with maybe we piecemeal it and we have some features there and maybe add on to it or have a separate site. Different things that we can look at, but really want to include basically every site as in our evaluation anyway. Pickleball courts, also discussed that. As far as the second and third phases of that with support facilities like expanded parking, lighting, different things like that aren't included with the direct implementation and construction of the courts themselves. Administration shared that we want to make sure that we have purposeful planning of property procurement and any land acquisition, that we have a good plan for that before we jump into those discussions. There's also talk about we need turf facilities, really good, usable, year-round facilities that is not natural grass but artificial turf. That really is a priority. Field lighting was also brought up, which is something that we have been working on. And then school district property swapping, especially around Jerome Avenue, Oak Harbor Elementary School, things like that. And then just some other feedback was, I think for both sides, appreciation for some improved communication with the commission, and that we'd like to see this as kind of a regular thing. I thought it was super beneficial for everyone's time, and definitely would love to evolve and kind of continue this format either on an annual or maybe semi-annual basis. Those were the main points I had down. I'd love to open up for those that listened in or were part of the conversation, share your thoughts that came out of it, and anything that you'd like to maybe put on discussion for future agendas.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was time well spent. It was nice to have some input from council and from the mayor. The mayor had typed up his vision, which is in the last page of the packet, so feel free to read through that if you get a chance. Yeah, the things that I kind of took away from it were exactly what Brian said. One thing, too, that stuck out was that Mayor said, he wants to focus on making sure that we're not just starting projects, but finishing projects. So I think that's something that is good feedback to have, because I know we have a lot of projects on our radar, but honing in on ones that we can get completed quickly would be wonderful. Aside from that, if anyone else has any comments?
Yeah, I think it was a good first step. I think we cleared out, sort of a lot of the beginning stuff that you need in order to establish a better working relationship. So I think that was hopeful. I'd like to see, the one thing, that Carrie said, and I'll echo this, that the mayor put in the letter was just wanting to finish stuff. Everything else is a little nebulous. It's good, but it's not specifically directed towards any action except starting and finishing, which is very important because we do need to make sure that we're doing that just for fiscal responsibility, but also because we have a history of being a little wishy-washy, I think, in some of our recreation and parks over the decades. And so that's important. I'd like to, sharpen the pencil and narrow this down a little more. And I think the same for council as well, but I'm hopeful after our interaction and our discussion and conversation that we'll be able to do that. I think we earned some trust in that, and so I'm hopeful in that regard that the work is being honored and that we'll be able to be more efficient. I think to that end, knowing that the mayor's priority is to finish, hopefully that will show up then in the budget, because finishing costs. There's a cost to start, and then there's a cost to languish, but the cost to languish isn't as expensive, right? Because you're already sort of you've wrote the first check, and now things are out there and they're in process, but hey, and then there's a cost to finish. And we need to make sure that we're managing that all across the board so that we do have the money to start, we do have the money to finish, and the plan all in between. Because the plan in between isn't necessarily always money, but it's the precious resource of staff and or volunteers or any other, people power that we're going to need to get these things done. And so that's going to be important as well, making sure that we're not overburdening our staff across the board, and also figuring out how we can get all the necessary departments to play well together so we can, universally get these projects done and get wins for the community and for the city, but definitely for the community. Yeah, the last thing I think, I'll pause for now. I'll let somebody else give feedback, and I'll probably have one more thing to say before we close on this topic.
Vicki, did you have any comments?
Like everybody said, I thought it was a great first meeting. I think, we've talked about meeting annually or biannually. I think biannually, especially at the very beginning, because it was, I think, more broad of a meeting and not in niceties and just kind of discussing things where when you get a little bit more familiar, then you can get into the nitty-gritty of everything. And so I would like to see it biannually at least to start until we have a good foothold on what everybody is thinking about. And then especially since I think we're going to have a couple new, or maybe some new commissioners come on board. And so that would be helpful to bring them up to speed as well.
I think I'd like to make a comment on the North End Fitness. I think that was like, hey, here's this great opportunity that has arisen for a building that has been used for recreation. Its location is not advantageous, I think, to the greater goals of what we're trying to get done. Years ago, there was on Oak Harbor Road, almost straight across from where North End Fitness is, an indoor soccer facility, and it, for what variety of reasons, but it did not pan out. And the end of Goldie Road has only gotten less active as far as the types of businesses that are out there, since we have certain agricultural operations that are out there that dominate sort of that space. I mean, yes, it's a corridor of traffic, but I'd be concerned that it's not going to. It's an investment that we would make that's not going to accomplish the greater goals that we have in mind for what a indoor recreation center could and should be for this community. I like seeking out new opportunities, but I don't like patchworking something that appears to have a lot of significant interest from a variety of community members of a variety of different demographics. And I really don't think, it sounds cute on paper, but the structure and the shape and the design of that building really isn't going to accomplish the goals we want. It's really well suited to be a gym. It's really well suited to be a warehouse. It's really well suited for those applications. But I don't think it's really suited for what we're looking for. And I think it would be potentially right now it would show up as the easy option. That would become a much more difficult option later. And I would be very wary of bringing on something of this type of impact and having it become what I would think would be a disappointment, both in use, in financial reward, and just for the community in general. I would say, and I don't think I'm the only one, that'd be like, that's an Oak Harbor decision to make, and that's what we're trying to get away from. And I think we can do better. But I do like the imagination and the vision and looking for different options. That is exciting. But I think this is one where we might have to build the shoe rather than find a shoe that fits, so to speak.
I concur with Eric completely. We had this similar discussion, smaller scale, on the Scout Club, or the Boys and Girls Club, that we need premier facilities, and we shouldn't be trying to fit into something and make it what it isn't. But I have a further question. There was, I understand that Rite Aid is going out of business. I don't know what the plans are for that building, if they own it, if they're leasing it. Is the city amenable to that kind of thing, looking at current buildings and possibly procuring or leasing for various options?
Yes, I would say the answer is yes. We just want to make sure that we have a real good plan for that use, and that we really understand what that benefit is going to be comparative to the cost. And
I think one of my concerns is this is that long-term project. And to do it right, it needs to stay in sort of the long-term area for now. And I worry if we start bumping into sort of the mid-tier or short-term, that we're going to get, the results that we want. I feel like it's a lot like the difference between, I feel like we're garage sailing a little bit when we start to look at things like this. And I don't think we want to be bargain hunting at this point. I think this is the wrong thing. Bargain hunt may be on more outdoor facilities where we can find for installing some, sports practice fields and facilities. Yeah, let's do that. Because it's a whole lot easier to move dirt and plant grass. But something like this, we're talking millions and millions of dollars, and I think a lot of passion. I really don't want to be the one that offers the bargain basement discount here.
Was our plan, do we have a plan to buy or build, or is it just kind of like see how it goes?
There wasn't a specific plan. This was something that seemed like an opportunity that came up that the city was looking at, but I would tend to agree with Eric, like without our actual plan of what we want the scope of it to be, I'm hesitant for the city to invest money in a building just because it's a big building. So yeah, that's the answer I have to that.
And that was part of our subcommittee discussion that we had, was that building. And are we getting a building, then we have to suit that building to our needs, or do we build a building that would suit our needs that will be, a better fit, and then maybe even cost less, because now you're not having to reconfigure something that, and then you can just build, as you go. And then do we start with one portion of it and go and get that done and then add on? There's a lot of different moving pieces, but I agree. I mean, not calling, I don't remember what you said, garage sale, whatever. But, if it was a building that exactly suited the purpose and the need, then that's one thing. But we don't even know what that is yet without having the study being done. So I think we are putting the horse before the cart on this one a little bit.
And again, I just think Goldie Road is not the ideal location. Let's, let's rather instead try to make that attractive for a business that can employ people that would actually use the better recreation center that we hope to make somewhere in town to have a greater economic impact on businesses operating in the main commercial corridors.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? No? Okay. All right, well, we will go ahead and move on then to item E, commission vacancy update. We do currently have 3 positions open. So we are hoping for applicants. There were a couple of applicants that were interviewed. I don't know if we've had any further applications sent in at this point. Brian, you might know the answer to that.
We have
One additional to the 2 that were interviewed?
just the one that we interviewed.
Oh, okay.
Because we had 2, but one of them really wasn't.
Right, yeah, yeah. So,
We
so-
have Stefania's vacancy, right? We
Mhm.
have had vacancy issues now, so we have 3 spots. One application that has been interviewed, that's been given to the mayor. He'll make the final recommendation, but yeah, we need more applications, so please help us get the word out. We did put a posting out on social media about it, to help get the word out. So as we got applications, and then we'll schedule those interviews. But I'll have to check with Phil. I haven't seen any additional yet.
okay.
Who does the interviewing?
So the new procedures for that, we have our ex officio, Eric Marshall, consultant, and clerk, and then I'm usually on it. And we have a set of 3 questions that we can ask each candidate, and we get those comments and our scoring of that, and how we feel about their qualifications and appropriateness for certain commission. She give that back to the mayor, and she will review those, and then, from what I understand from the email, I think what you heard of us is from the first round of selections, when we brought to the council,
Okay, any other comments or questions on that item? Okay, we will move on to item F, subcommittee updates.
I can give the update for facilities real quick. We didn't meet because of the Memorial Day holiday, so we have no other updates, and which was okay because the conversations that we had a lot with the workshop covered a lot of that. So kind of the same old there, but we're still moving forward.
For Parks and Playgrounds, it was the day after our joint meeting with City Council, so we did a little debrief on that. And then we also went over the RFP for the playground. Brian had tons of playground equipment catalogs that we got to peruse through and do a little brainstorming for the inclusive playground. And we also discussed shade structures for Windjammer. That seems like a project that could be relatively easy to complete, hopefully in the near future. We also discussed putting our heads together with the Arts Commission. I did reach out to them, and they said that they had also been looking at our shade structures for the park. So I think if we can maybe put our heads together with them and come up with a design or how we want that to look, and maybe they can help with some funding a little bit, that'd be wonderful too.
So real quick, I'm going to add that the shade structures, what we discussed was maybe having them look like sails, right? So that it kind of goes with the theme, so sailboat sails, and maybe have a couple different designs on them. And then that's when we started talking about maybe reaching out with the Art Commission.
That's all I have for Parks and Playgrounds, sorry. Programs and Events is our other one. Thank you to Vicky. She has stepped up, and she is also on that subcommittee now, since we're down a few members. So we met and we discussed, we talked about the Arbor Day. That was a successful event for us. Brian either has or will be meeting with the schools to get their feedback from the event as well. We discussed the activity guide, which will be coming up for fall for September through December. Let's see. Oh, we will need volunteers for the upcoming Mermaids and Pirates event, which is on June 28th. So if anyone's available and wants to dress up like a pirate or a mermaid and help out, that would be appreciated, even if it's a little costume, it doesn't matter. Your help would be appreciated. Did you have something to say about that?
I have a question for you, Callie. So I know that the high school students, they need to have, I think it's 5 hours a year community service. Can that be done in the summer, in the off-school season too?
Yeah, and then it will just count towards next year's school hours. So yeah, I think people would be interested in doing that.
Well, and I don't know if you're done with that one. We talked a lot about Camp Windjammer that's coming up. That they have staff available, they have field trips set up, and so far it looks like they're having a good amount of kids sign up for Camp Windjammer.
Also, just as a note, the splash pad is now open daily, as opposed to, it was just going to be the weekends until summer vacation starts, but it is officially open now daily, so that's exciting for everybody.
And it's full daily.
Yeah. All right, any questions or comments on any of those updates? No? Okay. We will move on to item G, Parks and Recreation Director updates.
All right. Well, you shared a couple of them. Yeah, we did open up the splash park for each day since Brandon has made the modifications that everything is on an activator now. We don't have any water flow through waste unless it's actually actively being used. And we had a couple very sad parents give feedback that they really wanted to use it with how nice the weather's been this past week. Even though kids are still in school, there's a lot of kids that have either homeschool programs or younger kids that aren't in school yet that wanted to take a part of that. So Brandon went ahead and made those changes, and I'll go through tentatively the week after Labor Day is kind of what we're aiming for. We'll have to discuss maybe a standardized policy around that. There's pros and cons on whether we make it weather related or not. I think it's a little more important to have some kind of a consistency so that the community knows, okay, this is when it starts and this is when it's no longer going to be available. If we just simply make it weather dependent, then people are, I'm not sure how they get the information, because either they have to look and, okay, is anything there? I don't see anything. Or we have to provide regular weekly reports on, well, we won't close it this week, maybe next week. So we'll discuss that, I think, in a subcommittee. But we have gotten the turf established at Flintstone Park, and that's getting settled in. Staff they've done a few little repairs there with some of the irrigation lines, but hopefully that'll get well established and we'll be able to open up that whole space here soon. They've completed the installation of the boulders there, and the park is looking good. As was noted, Hydros has been canceled. I don't know if there is a future for that yet or not, or what, if anything, the city can do to encourage a continuation of that. Right now we're just trying to get more information on it. I know it's a sad loss for the community, but everyone I've talked to and people I've heard from have all been very appreciative of the organizer, especially Jim Wiesner, and all the effort that he's put into providing that program. And like many amenities and programs and events that we have in community, you don't realize how much of a value it is until you don't have it anymore. And so a big thank you, at least from us, to those organizers for everything they've done to put on that event for our community. Staff have been working on a lot of graffiti cleanup, especially around the skate park and the portables there. That is always a continuing issue. We are working on trying to get better access to the cameras so we can better monitor that. 7th Avenue tree plantings have been completed, and it looks really nice. So thank you to Brandon's staff for their work with that. Almost completed. They're finishing up. They're finishing up some last touches there, yeah. And then just on June 17th, we'll be providing the department annual report to council at that workshop on June 17th. We'll also have a proclamation going to council proclaiming July as Parks and Recreation Month. And this is a tradition that was established by the U.S. House of Representatives, and one that we've been implementing here in Oak Harbor. And we have some fun little activations and scavenger hunts that we're hoping to provide along with that, and just highlight some of our areas and get people around to facilities that they might not normally have frequent to kind of discover those. So that's all I have, and Brandon has a few little updates as well.
Yeah, so just a couple things that Brian did not touch on. Last week, we were able to remove the double slide that has been broken up at Fort Nugent, and we replaced that with a climber. So that is open for the public, and kids are up there having a blast on it. Last Friday, we did the A6 Intruder and the A6B Prowler wash with the Navy. They had about 25, 28 volunteers out there, and we used our bucket truck to help clean the planes out there. And we also replaced the torn flag that was there. We had a little ceremony, flag changing out ceremony out there. Our guys are added to their mowing schedule 1727 Northeast 4th Ave. For development services. It's an abandoned house that we're just making sure that we don't, it doesn't get too grown up there. One other comment about Fort Nugent. I know we've been getting comments about the slick ramps that are up there. We have gone up to try to put grip tape on. That did not work out well. That lasted less than 24 hours. So I have urethane sealant that has grip in it. It's a 3 or 4 part sealant that we're going to go up there and try this week. I've got that tentatively scheduled for Wednesday. The goal all along has been to get this sealed and better, safer by the time that the kids get out of school. So that's really what I'm shooting for, but Wednesday is kind of what I've got in my head. If we can do it Wednesday, we'll have it open again Thursday. It is going to close a significant portion of the playground because we're going to do the ramp and the landing. And then the update for the urban forestry management plan. We have compiled all the information and sent that off to Planet Geo. We've sent them GIS information and some general information about the city, historic stuff, what we've done in the past for urban forestry management. So they are compiling that on their end. We are currently working on revising the old data in our ArcGIS website, and we're waiting on the ability to enter new data. Once we have that, we will be entering the new tree data into our system. Also waiting to hear back about the exact criteria that we need for the new trees. But yeah, we've sent off our stuff, and we are waiting to hear back from them.
I will share one more thing. So normally we don't have this just because of the timing, but we put together a monthly report every month for council, and it goes into their the admin's monthly report to council that's shared during the workshop each month. The workshop this month was pushed up because of the summer schedule. They only do one meeting and one workshop during the summer months. And so this was put together a little earlier than normally, as normally we would be doing this this week after we have our commission meeting. So it's usually not available when we meet here. But this is a report that gives a summary of our facility rentals, park project updates that Brandon shared, all the things that we were just talking about. We did do the jet cleanup this last week as well. And then we also include in here recreation, facility rental summaries, membership use, programs, our revenues and participations of those. Highlights, including like new staff. We highlighted our new summer camp staff this month. And then just a spotlight on some of our programs and special events that are coming up. And then Marina is also included in that with mortgage and use and fuel statistics and revenues, as well as some of the projects that the team's doing out there and highlights for that. So that's included in the council's monthly admin report. If you just want me to send that to you, just the what I submit that just includes the Parks and Recreation, happy to do that as well. But
Yes, I would like you to do that. I think you did it a couple of months in a row. But I don't.
yeah, that was when the timing of it just aligned well, that we put this together before we met, and I think we changed schedules around a little bit. So it's off now. So we have our meeting before we actually have the report done. But yeah.
Okay, any comments, questions? Go ahead.
Just a general comment. We touched on it this meeting. I think we've touched on it in other meetings as far as quality of facilities and programs and what we would settle for as opposed to plan and design. I think it's important that we keep that in mind. I don't have anything in particular in mind, but we addressed it when we first started talking about pickleball courts. We've addressed it with the playground situation. We're now going to be discussing it further with the recreation center. I think the consensus is, I keep hearing it over and over again, and hopefully we stay with that, that we develop facilities that the city can be proud of, that our citizens can be proud of and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we've seen in Oak Harbor. So again, general comment, I hope we stay on that track. Brian, separately, catch you off guard on this a little bit. Do you have anything that you can share from the Washington Parks and Recreation Conference that particularly caught your attention?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really good initiatives that are happening statewide, especially with inclusive spaces. Several of the trainings that were done were about inclusive design. So I have a lot of good notes from that and brought back a lot of materials like Carrie's talking about from playground providers. They talked a lot about budgets and grants. Right now it's kind of difficult. There's some uncertainty around grant programs, and we've experienced that as well. So they've actively been talking about strategies around that. The association is working on I guess you could call it a scholarship program for smaller communities, under 100,000, some under 50,000, that maybe don't have the same budget to put towards a lot of their projects that end up being supported by grants as the larger cities are, especially around the Seattle area. And those agencies, the really the whales, you might call them, take a very large portion of those grant dollars. So how do we better lobby for support of more rural initiatives and projects? So that was discussions that were had there as well. Let's see here. They had some pretty good site visits, some best practices they're doing. The Tri-Cities is actually one of the other locations that do hydroplane races. So I'm very curious to have some conversations with them on how that's put on. in their community. I don't know, I'll get some thought. I'll have to go back through my notes, and in fact, I'm happy to just share some of my notes from the conference with you guys and see if there's some best practices in there that you might be interested in having more discussions around.
Okay. Do we have any other member comments at this time?
We had talked a little bit in the workshop about like certain staff potentially coming to meetings. I'd like to make sure we follow up with that if some of the key staff that will help with implementation, funding, and other things, so we can, break down some of the hurdles to communication. If we can just extend those invitations again to the interested parties, I think that would be very helpful. I'd love to see that. I think that could be a real positive action coming out of our workshop. So I want to say that I think we need to make sure, or I'd like to see if we could also get, invite council members besides, to come in maybe and have a conversation here outside the workshop, or come participate as well. If we could extend that invitation, or even give them a platform to talk about, or discuss recreation here as a one-on board. I think that could be helpful. So we're only going to have so many meetings, but if we could do something like that, maybe it would help, or even if providing something written that we can then discuss.
One idea that I've seen in other cities that I've worked for is, during the council meetings, they actually set apart some time for the ex officios to report on what the commissions that they serve on, what they discussed, what action items came out of that, and if any of those things want to be put on a future council agenda. I think it's a good discussion to have with the mayor and administration on, can we provide a time for council to have a little more of that return and report to council, and then those comments that are had during that portion, they can come back to the commissions individually and give that feedback as well. Just something that maybe to provide a little more back and forth mechanism, right?
One other comment as well. We are working on a lot of projects. We're talking about facilities. We're, looking at RFPs for a variety of different things. One of the things I'd like to do, or I think would be beneficial, is start to think about what type of events we want to put on, so we can inform our design around the events that we want, rather than creating events after the fact based on facilities. If we can have some of that visioning take place, because one of the conversations we had in the workshop was, well, we can't get, the excitement around here, whether it's vendors or otherwise, to different things. And we're sort of just calling them out to a blank slate and hoping something happens. But if we can start to build, a vision for events that we want to do, and then designing our spaces and facilities to them, we can incorporate partners ahead of time so we can launch well, rather than hope and, if you build it, they will come kind of thing, and then get frustrated when they're already committed to other things that are a little more exciting, have a little more buzz, are more, have more foot traffic or whatever, because vendors that are going to come and create the hype are looking for maximum impact. And designing after the fact to create that impact is always more difficult than thinking about it ahead of time. And measuring and looking at the events that we do have, whatever they are, in the recreation program, and seeing if they're the ones that we were going to value enough that are going to be the draws that we want.
Yeah, this is something that Liz and I have been talking about quite a bit lately, actually. And I think we need to have kind of a larger discussion of what does the city want its role in special events to be. The chamber is kind of been changing, adjusting what their stance on special events are and their role in it, and probably need to have a larger partnership discussion on that. And I agree, some purposeful planning around the spaces and the partners and vendors that we do with that. And we have in our programs and events subcommittee, I think probably a good opportunity to have those discussions.
A little bit related to that. I know it's been discussed for years about the amphitheater in Windjammer Park. Is the Arts Commission doing anything right now with that, or is that kind of just on the back burner?
No, not yet. You know, they just got done with the art plan, and they're really focused on kind of the implementation of some of the things that came out of that, and building sort of a strategy for implementation. I imagine we'll come back to that. We have some art pieces that we still need to get installed from the Kinnebrew collection that Brandon's been working on, and electrical boxes and a couple other art things that they're trying to get done. You know, they're very much a commission that realizes there's a lot of needs, and we really want to just let's bite off what we can chew and get that done, and then move on to the next one. So when we get around to that point of discussion, yeah, we'll definitely include this commission with that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, another comment I have is I was reading over the RFPs and we start talking about some demographic data, and we noted that 27% of the population is below 18 and like 17% of the population is above, 65. That leaves us with the majority of the people in, right, 55-ish plus percent being adults. And that's an underserved population for recreation, and yet it's the majority. Quite heavily actually underserved. And also they're the ones with the most income. They're the ones with the most mobility typically as far as being able to get to and use resources. We have a lot of conversations around youth sports. We have the center, which, historically had been a senior thing. I just want to bring that back up. What are we doing for recreation for the people that pay the majority of the taxes, that, are funding or are the most, to fund, whether through volunteer or through finances, the things that we're going to do? It's a missing and silent majority, I think. And I want to make sure that we keep that on our radar. I mean, we have it right here in black and white, but yet we skip over it oftentimes thinking about some of these other populations. And I want to make sure we draw that back, because they're the ones that are going to drive other places for recreation. And they're the ones that are also going to talk the most about what's available. And as we move forward and as we continue to develop, whether it's programming or facilities or otherwise, we've got to work really hard to mobilize that demographic, which is a large one, because it will be the most impactful and it will be the most valuable, I think, in accomplishing the goals, both, just financially and for, I think, changing the sort of esprit de corps, you could say, of the city in regards to recreation. So I just want to bring that back out. It's there in print. We don't talk about it. I want to make sure that stays on all of our radar.
On that note, that is something that I hear all the time is what do you do? There's nothing to do, for young adults and adults in general. Do we have any, I don't want to just start creating programs without knowing what's wanted or needed. Have we done any kind of community survey or anything like that, or could we, on desired programs or leagues or things like that? I would hate to put in a lot of effort on something that nobody's going to sign up for or care about, but it would be nice to create programs and opportunities for adults.
Well, I think that's the good thing about what we're doing with, with some of this stuff. I mean, we're going to be paying to get that information. It's good. I just want to make sure that often we drift towards youth when it comes to facilities and things, which is a lot of what we do. And we think about things like playgrounds. No adults going in a jungle gym. I mean, except to fetch their kid when they get stuck. Just thinking about ways in which the adults aren't sort of co-participants or even held hostage by the whims of their, children or the people that they take care of at these facilities. And then also, how do we partner with the local businesses that do this stuff so we're not replicating, but how do we, help work with the community so we are uplifting those businesses so we're not, because we just can't program sports for adults. We know that doesn't really work typically, especially in a community of this size. I'd love to be wrong, but typically you see in communities of this size that you're just not going to get robust sports league turnout. But having the availability for the non-program events, as well as partnering with the people that are already doing stuff very well in the for-profit sector, and building a greater, I think, network to help do that is going to really make a difference. And then we fill in the gaps. We provide the non-programmed places for play. We educate and inform about the values of play, and we work with our partners, you know, on and everywhere, whether that's from mental health to you know, all the other recreation opportunities we have, both passive and active. But we need to make sure that we do that so we break the cycle of there's nothing to do in Oak Harbor, which is just patently false. And I think that's our job.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of those kind of surveys with the pros plan, but I don't need an $80,000 plan to tell me that, you know, we need more adult programming. I mean, we already know that. Of all the like leagues and providers and agencies and clubs that, you know, have sprung up to kind of fill this need, they're all youth focused, right? You know, there's very few that have programs around young adults and yeah, that demographic. Our recreation programs are mostly, the growth is mostly limited by our ability to hire for refs and instructors. That's probably the main factor governing the speed of growth there. We do scrutinize them quite a bit. In fact, I think we spend more on scrutinizing our programs than we do actually implementing them. But yeah, Liz and Craig have been incrementally increasing the amount of programs, and you can see that in our reports. So they are coming. Like I said, we would love to do more collaboration with the Navy. They're the one organization that does do adult recreation programming, and be able to provide that on a community-wide basis. So,
Yeah,
appreciate
please
those
don't
comments.
please don't hear what I'm not saying. Like, Craig and Liz are doing a phenomenal job. I just want to make sure as we cast vision that we continue to prioritize that, as the numbers would say, and also think about, you know, multi-generational. I mean, one thing about the inclusive playground that's nice is, in a sense, because of some of the target demographic, it is going to have some multi-generational just inherently in it. But multi-generational play is sort of absent. Multi-generational recreation. I mean, we have, you know, passive stuff. Yeah, there's the camping, the, you know, the hiking and all that stuff. And we are creating options for that. But continuing to think about how we can do that, because parents are often attached to either a generation, you know, or I should say middle-aged adults are attached either to a generation below them or a caregiver for a generation above them, just based on where they're at. And that's your, you know, a very large demographic. So thinking about how we can do that, I think it's critical. And then designing our structures to meet that need.
Okay, any other comments?
I'm gonna go off on a different question, I guess. Is so with the splash pad being reopened, I've taken my children down a few times, and there's been times where, you know, kids are playing, and then all of a sudden I have to use the restroom, right? So you go to the restrooms. Well, people are changing their clothes, or, you know, and taking quite a long time in the facilities to get off their wet clothes, to dry off, to put on new clothes. Is there a way for us to have like a Portland loo without the loo type thing, to where it's just a changing room, really, structure, or a couple of them? I think that would be extremely beneficial, especially with, you know, people with children. It takes a minute, and then there's a backup, and then accidents occur.
Yeah, let's look at that in our parks subcommittee, a footprint for it. I've implemented those in, you know, water-based adjacent parks, and it's usually just a little swirl fence, right, that provides two changing areas, and doesn't take much of a footprint, something we can look at.
Okay, any other comments? Tom, Callie? Good, okay. We'll move on to item 7, determination of future agenda items. Do we have anything at this time?
A question I had, we had in the past been sort of having conversations about communication
in regards to Parks and Rec, and Maggie had come, I think, once or twice and then was unable to make it, and then we haven't circled back on that. Is that a conversation that we have any interest in having again, or is that not necessary just with timing and flow? I just wanted to bring that back to the surface.
I think it's worth talking about if we have something specific to discuss with Maggie. Like if there's, like we want to talk about social media strategy, or we want to talk about internal communication, or advertisement for specific events. So if there's anything specific in mind, I think it would be worth having Maggie come.
Well, it's probably too late now, but given that July is like Parks and Rec month, I think maybe thinking next year, I mean, at least having June, having a conversation, because I imagine she'll be handling some of the communications for that kind of thing, so we can build structure and strategy for that. This year, it's probably, maybe we can come in after, have maybe Maggie or whoever's in charge of that come in August and give us a report on how that went and the learnings there. So maybe we can help brainstorm on how to make it better.
The social media effort is really good. Now, I guess it's only really good if you're a part of it. And I don't know how many people are a part of it. I don't know how many people log into Facebook or other options. But I learn a lot just seeing the Facebook posts about what's happening downtown, even about the commission openings. And so it's being addressed, and that's good. I just don't know how many people participate in it.
Well, the good news is the more you participate in it, the more it'll show up visible to the people in your contact network for them to participate in it. So that's the joy of that algorithm. So as long as we interact with the posts, it will continue to spread it. But you do need to interact with it, and a comment's worth more than a like.
Any other items for agenda? Okay. Any other comments or anything? All right, we'll go.